Oh, let's talk about what's going on with the weather. We have seen some really interesting conditions of course, in Canada as well as the United States. Some good, some bad. It's a real mixture, as we would expect in any given growing season for farmers and ranchers. Here to talk about what's happening is Matt Makens of Makens Weather out of Denver, Colorado. Matt, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me back. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, well, depending on who you talk to and where they're located, I think
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
good way to look at it. Southwestern United States, hot.
Hot, dry. Usually we'd be looking for their monsoon right now. At least the signs of it to kick in. It doesn't look like a very good one. So they're cranky territory, down in the Southwest for sure.
Now, in Western Canada, things are looking a lot better, Matt. Like
I
we
know.
got
I
some
know.
moisture that we have not had for a number of years. You look at the
Right.
Manitoba moisture map, you look at the Saskatchewan moisture map, looking pretty good, but it's pretty early in the growing season and it's just starting to heat up. What can we expect here June, July, August as we look at this crop?
Sure. Well, the timing was pretty good for, the optimism of the season, getting things started. Cattle are looking good. Corn, I know we have some delays here and there with plant and all that, but what a difference, since 2000,
Yeah.
1920, somewhere in there. So yeah, big difference there. Going forward, the last time you and I chatted was in February down in Orlando. And we talked about the timing of this transition, the transition being going from El Nino to La Nina, and how the moisture would either arrive early or late, depending on the speed of this arrival of La Nina. And to an extent, we still have to kind of worry about that for the summer and the fall. But really, the big global picture, once you hit summer, a lot of these impactors that get so much buzzword headlines, they kind of just chill out. Summer is the lowest impact for El Nino or La Nina. So how you start off your summer is more telling than going forward. I think as we go forward, we have to get a little more worried about the heat, temperature. It was a very warm winter, obviously. That has not
Yeah.
changed. It's still very warm. So temperatures, in my mind, if I'm a producer in Canada, I'm thinking temperatures. How do I adapt to a hotter summer? What does that mean looking forward? And then from there, then of course you're thinking, okay, well, are we shutting the water down?
Mm.
And not necessarily. We're going to have to worry about the timing of that water. Is it hitting at that perfect reproductive time? Is it hitting when I'm trying to cut? Whatever that may be. But temperatures to me is the biggest issue summer. And then we'll look for the timing of that precipitation as we go as we go forward to be more and more critical.
Yeah, if let's just say we didn't get moisture again. We would be in real trouble in Western Canada because of the fact we don't have that reserve, right? We've had some moisture and precipitation, and that's great. But as the audience continues to remind me whenever I talk about, hey, the good conditions out there, hey, Sean, it's early. We don't have a lot of depth to this reserve, and we're going to need some more fairly soon here. High temperature, but the fact that we've had moisture early, kind of what I've heard from you. I just want to make sure I got this straight because we had moisture early in the season. Does that raise the probability that we have it in as the season moves on? Is that the case? Like rain brings more rain?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, that will be helpful. Yes. I think it's more of setting the stage, if you will. It's not to say that, May is wet, all of your summer is going to be wet.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. Um, but let's take a look at the prairies, especially the western prairies. That's like the east side of the Rocky Mountains all the way through the United States. If you get really good spring moistures, which a lot of us did, you can overcome that dry patch, say in early July, more easily than if you didn't have that moisture.
Yeah.
So I meant more, so I didn't want to be misleading with that comment. I meant more of, we have a good foundation, we have a good place to start, which is better than we've been for years. Um, so as we go forward and we hit those 2 week dry phases in late June, early July, mid July, when we hit those drier patches, the corn, the grass, whatever's already happy. So the timing, as it spreads out, is still not necessarily bad. Whereas last year, If we were talking about 2 week dry patch in July, well, that could ruin everything,
Yep,
you know?
absolutely. As we look at the Corn Belt and move up in towards central and eastern Canada, what's happening there? We've obviously got this U.S. corn crop off to a pretty decent start. Um, that hasn't been necessarily the case in a province like Ontario, where they've been challenged with a lot of moisture. People having trouble getting out and spraying now as well. People having to switch from corn to beans to complete the planting. What kind of weather pattern are you seeing across that stretch of North America?
Okay, take the Iowa, Illinois, into Indiana, the three I states, move them northward over the Great Lakes up into your grain region. Everything has been wet through April and May, depending on exactly where you are, but a good wet phase, as
Yep.
you mentioned. As you go throughout your summer, we're going to see conditions, the frequency of your moisture is going to spread out as we go forward. There's going to be a good wet period, whether it be mid-July, late July, August, something like that. But but that but the timing of that window has to be exact, or else we're going to start to see more volatility in these prices, saying we didn't get that water, silking is not good enough, or whatever that may be. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. So don't take that because we're in a good weather pattern.
Yeah.
But just take my meaning to be, okay, Matt's telling us the frequency of water is spreading out. If it's not in that 10-day window I need it, it's going to be hot. If it's not raining, it's going to be hot. So we will have some impact there. I don't think the price volatility of any grain is going to be silent until we pass mid late July, just
Yeah.
because this weather is becoming, it was so wet, a lot of change to plans, but now it's going to become, did we get the rain in that 2 week window or whatever it may be for you in the right place?
Yeah. You
Because
do it.
things are going to progressively get drier.
Okay. Okay. Well, so take it while you can get it. What,
Yeah,
what I'm hearing there.
yeah, yeah. But there are parts of as you go far eastern Ontario, all the way to the Maritimes. As we go through summer and things do get progressively drier. So if I'm sitting there today being like, it's just too wet, I've got to get drier weather, it is going to go into that area. It will be moving in. It's probably too late for a lot of corn guys, so they're switching or they're going to a hybrid that's shorter maturation, whatever it may be. But going forward, that stretch of Canada down to the northern U.S., the Great Lakes, does get drier from summer into fall with this pattern.
Hmm.
And then, next spring we'll get some water in things, but not growing season.
But we at the beginning we were talking about how hot it's been in the Southwest. What does that balloon of heat, or there's probably a better term than that, but I'll just say that heat dome or that balloon of heat that is in that area. What is that doing to the rest of North America, and what happens to that heat?
And the problem is we're going to have really serious drought issues here, and they're going to kick in really rapidly. The southwestern U.S., the wettest part of their year is during the monsoon, which kicks in, depending on exact location, mid to late June, goes through July, August, tapers off. And it's not like a steady rainfall. It kind of comes in little spurts, but that's the primary time to get water on that grass. And we're not likely to have that at all this year. And they're already in drought because the winter El Nino really didn't do much water for them. So they're already in drought. It's already hot, a lot of record heat. That just compounds this issue. There's a feedback going on. So now we're getting progressively drier faster than normal, warmer faster than normal, and that drought area is going to expand. It's going to move into Kansas, Colorado, Utah, western Texas, keep growing and spreading out. So for the U.S., cattle production is going to have a lot. If I see cheap hay today, I'm buying it.
Hmm.
Uh, if I'm a forage person, this year my wheat was good, my oats were okay, whatever it may be. Next year I'm going to plan on not very good forage because this drought's going to overtake my area. If I'm a corn producer in the U.S. or hay, alfalfa in the northern states, my outlook is not as grim. You know, We may have periods of drought, but overall, my hay may do well, my grasses may do well. I'm looking at a good corn crop because we have optimism. I just got to worry about my timing in July and hope there's not a flash drought or severe weather damage or something. But yeah, that's the southwestern U.S. is going to be the problem area to start with, and we're going to see the drought numbers just increase too quickly there.
Which area in North America, like that sounds like kind of the biggest concern when you look at North America. What's the area that you feel the most optimistic about from a weather cooperating standpoint? Is there one that comes to mind?
For the rest of the year,
Yeah.
I'm optimistic if I'm in the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, most of the corn country. I'm optimistic because of what we had this spring.
Yeah.
If that spring moisture didn't happen, I would be a pessimist. But I like where we are today, and I can deal with the timing coming forward. So, from an even a longer term perspective, let's say I'm sitting here today and everything's in the ground, I'm just watching it grow. Next year, I'm still optimistic if I'm a corn grower, any cereal grains, beets, anything like that in the northern U.S., I'm still pretty good because I'm going to have a cold, wet winter. Hopefully, I have a lot of snow. That's going to help me next year. Um, so yeah, the northern states, the Pacific Northwest, those kind of areas, that's where I'm optimistic.
Well, and then that includes the Western Canadian Prairies then too, does it not?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As we go into La Nina, usually, across Canada, the northern U.S., usually La Nina was a great snow producer for the West, for our high plains and your prairies, Peace region also. La Nina used to be classically a very good snow producer, and that kind of set the stage for our water, obviously, for the next year. It's tapered off a little bit, but still, it's a good supply of moisture. At least it gives us the opportunity to get some snows and rains in here. Um, so Canadian Rockies, our northern Rockies, that kind of region can do very well with La Ninas in the wintertime to get that water.
Yeah. What's been your biggest surprise this year so far?
Um, I came into the season with some optimism for wetness, but not as widespread as it has been.
Okay.
Iowa, we started for Iowa up to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, sitting in April, we had all of us were kind of worried, you know? It's like, wow, we really dried out this winter, especially Iowa. We have historic drought. Some counties haven't been this dry in 100 years. And then late April and May kind of kicked in, and we kind of said, oh, yeah, we're going to get water. But the magnitude of that water was really tremendous. And every week that I look at the prairies and up to the northern parts of the provinces, there's a lot of water on those precip forecast maps. So yeah, I think my window of optimism was maybe 3 weeks around May, sometime into early June. But man, that 3 week window is looking like a 6 or 7, 8 week window for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But if somebody's listening in the Peace region right now, they're like, I, what are you talking about? You know,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a large geography too, right? Like
yeah,
it's
it's largely been favoring the east side of the Rockies all the way across. So that's been my surprise is yeah, that window of wetness, it sure turned out to be wet and it's lasting longer.
good message there for people in some of those cattle producing areas from a forage perspective. That's some great thoughts.
Yeah,
Hey,
great start to the season for a lot of them. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But thinking ahead for sure. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
You bet. I always appreciate to ramble to you. So